Seeing how to shoot battle sharks should be done.
Good afternoon. It is Thursday, February 6th, 2025, and we are starting our afternoon agenda with our guest. He's got us for the next hour with a couple different topics. Matt Coda, if you want to come up and join us and direct the way. Is this your first time in the committee this year or second time? I met everybody, that's right. We can just jump in to wherever we need. They no longer have the cord. So I think you have to figure out. I think so.
It's the little thing that I sent you, like, something again right now.
Thank you, Kim.
And we are going, all the data and then there is, and then some for all the dealers and sales piece and advanced clean cars 1 to 2. So I guess then on the latest copy of the agenda, which one is first and which one is second, but you, handling them both, can sort that out for us. And
Thank you. Apologize for the pause.
no worries, we've
Getting there.
gotten pretty used to it here in terms of, today is, Thursday all day. Getting closer and closer. I see. I can see part of the presentation now.
Good start.
Way to make it really big so I can read it. Let's see if we can figure out where that exit is. Hopefully it's
Yes.
it actually in.
Yes, University. That is a shot taken by my son, Davis, from that's exit 14. That's the Staples Plaza. And that's the Cloverleaf.
Thanks.
Our busiest intersection, I believe.
And the site of what, the most accidents in the state between exit, 14 and 16? Is that the deal? I believe we'll hear from traffic safety at some point, but I've learned from last year's testimony, that's the most accident piece, dangerous portion of road in Vermont.
For the record,
Yes.
my name is Matt Coda. I'm with the firm Meadow Hill. Meadow Hill provides nonprofit management services, including advocacy and communications to a variety of different industries. I'm here on behalf of the Vermont Vehicle and Automotive Distributors Association, which is a 153 member organization that are in the business of selling cars and trucks.
I'm sorry.
I'm not able to open it up.
Yeah, I'm not on there.
The link's not working. It's okay.
The PDF.
Yeah, I tried
Okay.
several times. Okay.
Okay, Cameron's gonna work.
I can resend it if there's an error.
Give it a shot and go from there. And did you have a question, Representative Lally, or was that the same thing? You couldn't get it?
Oh, I was just gonna say it gave us a great view of where that pedestrian bridge that we learned about earlier was gonna
Can you
go.
point that out? I'd love it.
So I served on the South Burlington City Council. I was on the development board of South Burlington City Council, so I
There you
was
go.
one of the votes to approve that expenditure, which I don't know how this committee feels about that, but please don't hold it against me.
Where is it?
So we voted to,
Okay. I don't know how we ever fell time schedule.
so here's the new development. Sorry, I gotta go back.
Oh, okay.
So here we are looking south.
Yeah.
Right?
Looking north there.
Right, looking north here. Okay, here's the mall, University Mall. Here's the CVS. Here's Dorset Street, my house over here. And this bridge would go between the University Mall, back of the University Mall, over into this development here, which is a lot of student housing. That would eventually take you over here to, this is the over the plaza. But it would get you up to the hill, which is where the students are.
Yeah.
So the idea as a South Burlington City Councilor was how can we get all the students that live up here over here and into the shopping area and the restaurants? Yes, we were very greedy when we suggested we should spend federal money to do that. And so they don't have to walk on this bridge. which
Or
is-
bike.
Or bike on that bridge, which is dangerous. But you see
Very
students walking with their Trader Joe's bags and their Target bags all the time. That would be a much better way to get them safely back and forth to Commerce in South Burlington.
You cross four different intersections, merging intersections. It's very dangerous.
Very dangerous to bike there. Yeah, so that's why we hopefully get built. Anyways. So Matt Code on behalf of Veda, here to provide more context to some of the testimony from earlier. For those of you that were at our breakfast meeting this morning, there'll be some repetition here, and I apologize. However, I think it's important as we set the stage for what is the energy transformation that we all know is coming. Right? So just to say it one more time. I also serve on the Climate Council as the fuel sector representative. And as we were very well aware, the number one sector for greenhouse gas emissions is transportation. The number one recommendation that we offered on the Climate Council for resolving that or removing those is to electrify how we drive. We understand this, and we are going to get there. The contention of the Vermont Vehicle and Automotive Distributors Association is we're all in on EVs. We have invested millions of dollars on EV infrastructure. We are ready and able to sell these. They are not coming to our dealerships in the speed of which the regulation requires. And they are not being demanded by the consumers in the speed at which the regulation requires. That's just the outset. But let me dive into the details. So the new and used vehicles registered in Vermont, again, 63% of the vehicles that we sell, new to you, registered in Vermont, are used. We sell roughly 40,000 new vehicles every year in Vermont. If you look at the past 3 years, you'll notice that the most popular car in Vermont is not a car. Only about 21% of the vehicles sold are cars. They're CUVs, SUVs, wagons, vans, and trucks make up 75%. You take out the wagons, the small crossovers, CUVs, and the minivans, and you're still over 50%. Trucks and large SUVs and larger vans. We had a great year in 2021, great year in terms of vehicle sales. Dropped off a little bit in 2022, 23, but picked back up in 2024. The top 20 new vehicle makes. This is the first year in my 3 years of doing this that Harley Davidson made the top 20. We sold a lot of Harley Davidsons. I'm not sure why, but we did. Toyota always cut number one, followed by Subaru and Ford, Chevy. These are new vehicles by make. When you dive into the models, there's some new information that we didn't have last time. Top 10 new vehicles by models, Toyota RAV4 is at the top of the list. You'll notice that if you look at the top 10 selling new vehicles in Vermont, 5 of the 10 are trucks. They're not little trucks, they're trucks. The Ram 1500, GMC Sierra, Chevy Silverado, Toyota Tacoma, Ford F-150. When you look at the used vehicles by model, Subarus tend to be the most popular used vehicles. They've got 3 different models there, along with the Toyota Tacoma. 4 of the 10 are trucks. And this tool that Veda has that allows us to do these deep dives, we can get into the particulars. If you ever say, how many Ferraris were registered in Vermont in 2023, I'll tell you. I can tell you. I don't actually know if we have any, but it goes into that level of detail. If it's registered, it's recognized, it'll tell you, along with powertrain. Another really important detail, which gets to some of the talk about incentives, which is how do people pay for cars in Vermont? Well, in 2024, we can tell you that if it was a new car, overall, all new cars, the 43,000 new cars that we've sold, about half of them are taken out of loan. Only about a third are lease, 17% cash. But when it comes to EVs, on the right, the green chart, leases, at least in 2024, leases were the preferred method. If you think about a lease comes from the manufacturer. manufacturer will, if they want to move cars, a lease is sometimes the most attractive package that they can get to offer these deals. They can move the lease from, you can saw some leases that are 18 months, 24 months, 36 months. You have longer lease terms. What that means, of course, for those that aren't in the car business, when you get a lease, when you sell a lease as a dealer, it's financed by the leasing company, which tends to be an arm of the manufacturer. And then when it comes back, the dealer, so when you turn your lease in, because it's the end of it, the dealer, you can buy it. You can buy your lease. It's written right on the contract. The dealer can buy it back at the price the manufacturer requests. And if the dealer says, I'll pass, I don't want this car back, it has to go back to the manufacturer. That becomes their asset. Why is that important? Why am I emphasizing that so much? Because we've had a tremendous amount of lease deals in 2024. And some of you may know these. Some of you may have seen the ads. Some of you may have even gotten a great lease deal. We're talking $100 a month for some Nissan and Volkswagen products. Again, capturing the $7,500 tax credit, which is cash on the hood, that changed. IRS allowed us to use lease deals and to discount the price rather than wait till you file your taxes. Before they ran out, the $5,000 to, well, depending on your income level, that was part of it too. You could lease a car and get that incentives, state incentives, plus utility incentives. There's some very attractive lease deals out there. And I think that's why when you saw the numbers about how our EV sales, because leases are part of that, didn't drop off too much after we lost the incentives, there were very attractive offers out there from the manufacturers. But those will come back. 18 months, 24 months. What happens to them at that time? I couldn't tell you.
Do you have any idea ballpark of were there a lot, that high percentage of 18, 24, 36? Was it a really high percentage of 18? Because that's going to happen. If they started in the early part of 2025, we're only more than halfway done, right?
That's a really good question. Typical lease deals are 3 years, 36 months. I don't know what percentage were 24 versus 18, but in the next chart you'll see Toyota, Nissan, not Tesla, but Toyota, Nissan were definitely offering some very attractive short-term lease deals. Volkswagen as well.
And they're only eligible to use those incentives, at least the state ones, or the federal ones too, only one. So when they get this lease turned back in and they want to buy another one, there's not going to be any money for them.
That is going to be the price shock. The best lease, if you've ever had a lease deal on your car, you know the best lease is your first lease because you trade in your car that you own and you're like, oh, these payments are pretty low. But if you didn't have a car to trade in or didn't bring any cash to the table, it would have been low. This is kind of like that for a lot of these great attractive lease deals, which is the price is low because of these incentives. But if you wanted to buy the car out or wanted to get in a new lease deal, you couldn't capture those incentives. I don't know what's going to happen with the $7,500 from the feds. I don't know what's going to happen. I can't predict the future, what's going to happen in 2 years with state incentives. But I don't know if we'll have a time in the next 2 years that was as attractive as it has been because of both federal and state incentives, plus motivated car sellers wanting to flip their calendar year, their model year from 2024 to 2025.
There are two questions. One, do you have any data at all about what percentage of leases actually go back to the manufacturer in Vermont? I mean, because you're saying you don't know. Okay.
I don't have that. I'm sure there's national
Yeah.
one that I could look that up and get that to you, but we have a national organization called the National Auto Dealers Association that is a great repository of information, but it's not state specific. It's more national purpose, but that's a great question. I can just tell you that dealers have the choice to purchase the vehicle at the price the manufacturer. Customer purchases the vehicle at the price. When you sign your name, you'll notice on that big sheet, that 11 by 18 sheet, this is the price. If you want it in 36 months, this is the price you pay, guaranteed, which is nice, but you don't have to, obviously. The dealer has a different arrangement with the manufacturer. The dealer will have to pay the price that the manufacturer determines. But the dealer can say, no, thank you. And they put the truck on a truck, or the car on a truck, and then send it wherever the manufacturer thinks it'll have the greatest opportunity to recover that value as an asset.
And my second question is, once the incentives are applied to a vehicle, and it hits the used market, I mean, that incentive is basically built in. I mean, people know what it is, so, you can't like get the incentives and then turn around and sell it as a brand new, as a new car without a reduced price because of the incentives.
Yes, you do lose value. Yes.
Representative Rowe?
Do you think possibly that those sales of EVs will flatten, no incentives, no attractive deals? You don't have a trade-in on a lease? All those tell me that those sales are going to flatten.
Difficult to predict. However, I don't want anyone to be misconstrued to think that incentives don't help close a deal. They absolutely do. And sometimes it's the manufacturer's incentives, sometimes it's the utility incentives, sometimes it's the state incentives, sometimes it's the federal incentives that, all put it all together and you can make a very attractive package and close a deal with your customer. But it's hard to know. Sorry, skip through it by accident. Hard to know what, it's hard to know what that future is. It's just like predicting any market.
You saw me talking to Rob Kidd during lunch there. What do you think is the best EV out there on the market?
Oh, jeez, I couldn't say that. They're all my children. I love them equally. All my children, I love them equally.
Anybody want to guess? You can, let's hear it. Who makes that? That's, no. And Rob?
All right, we go this way. We have witnesses.
Well, here's what the Vermonters think are their favorites, at least by their purchasing. Toyota, Nissan, Tesla, and Ford, Jeep, Chevrolet, Kia, Volkswagen. But you see these 20 manufacturers, they represent 98% of all electric vehicles sold. So I'm not really missing anyone here. The top 20 are really the ones you're going to get an EV from.
Rob said Honda makes the best EV on the market.
I can't play favorites. Okay, so gasoline, ethanol, 72%. Again, this is all from Experian Auto Count. Gas electric hybrids are 10%, biodiesel, diesel, 3%, and on and on and on. So 12%. Those 43,000 or however many that was vehicles that we registered in Vermont new. And when I say this registered, this is an important distinction. Registered in Vermont new means that someone put a green plate on it. It doesn't necessarily mean they bought it in Vermont. You can buy a car in Arizona or Florida or New Hampshire and get a green plate on it, register, pay the purchase and use tax. But this is what this is tracking. So this is the number that you've seen from AOT, and it paints a positive picture, a trajectory of our transformation to electric vehicles. Again, car dealers all in on electric vehicles. Understand the issue. We understand that transportation, the highest source of greenhouse gas emission, electric vehicles, the policy mechanism in order to get us to burn less gasoline and emit less greenhouse gas emissions. You see this number and you say, oh, okay, this is the cumulative effect. This is people keeping their electric vehicles, not turning it in, maybe selling it in the used car market, but staying in Vermont. The 5,000 a year in 2024, but added on to all of the vehicles that were sold since 2014. So the last 10 years, this number looks like a great increase, and it is. Over 20 million invested and 5,500 state incentives. So this is telling us that we are making gains. However, and also dealers have had to, in order to accept these cars, yes, they've benefited from incentives, no question. But they've also had to make significant investments as required by their manufacturer in electric vehicle charging. You cannot sell an electric vehicle without having chargers and without having technicians that are trained by the factory to do warranty work on EVs, and that costs money. If you were in the meeting this morning, you may have heard that Dave Birmingham, who is the owner of the 802 franchises, there's 802 Subaru, 802 Toyota, 802 Honda, Burlington Subaru, very successful local business person. He's invested over $1.5 million. This company's money, not any of his company, in electric vehicle charging stations. It's a significant investment with a payback that is still TBD, based on sales.
And just to let you know, the slide isn't in the presentation, so if you want to update the,
Oh, yes, I will. Sorry.
at least it's not mine.
Yes, I need to send the updated one. Sorry. But here's another way to look at the same numbers, which is this comes from the Department of Energy Alternative Fuel Center. And it shows you how many of the vehicles registered in Vermont with green plates. I was just telling you stuff that is pre-owned and new. This is everything with a green plate on it, according to the US Department of Energy Alternative Fuels Data Center. So yes, 17,800 sure looks good there. But here it shows you we are going to be burning gasoline and diesel fuel for quite a long. It just really puts into scope the challenge of electrifying the transportation sector. And there it is now. Same numbers, different way to show it. Gasoline, 90%. Next is biodiesel and diesel. Of course, all those trucks are diesel. Hybrid electric vehicles, 3%. And then your 2.5% basically is your plug-in electric vehicles, EVs. Cars on the road, registered in Vermont, green plates, valid registration. That's what we're talking about here. That's this universe, according to the Department of Energy. And then we get into what's the road ahead, what comes next. So really a lot of what comes next is dictated by a couple of things. One is our 2020 law, Global Warming Solutions Act, that puts legal obligations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, that empowers the 23 members of the Vermont Climate Council, of which I serve, to come up with a climate action plan every 4 years. Last one was 2021. The next one will be updated in July of 2025. That says, what's the plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions commensurate with the law that says we must reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% below 1990 levels by the end of the decade. And I can tell you, number one with a bulletin point is sell less gas-powered vehicles, sell more electric vehicles. Also other things, bike, bus, walking, absolutely. But how do we get people to stop buying gasoline and stop traveling with gasoline-powered engines and use electric vehicles? So one of the top recommendations of the Vermont Climate Council, which was adopted by the Agency of Natural Resources, is the Vermont Low and Zero Emission Vehicle Regulations. So we have a different take on this rule. At the time, the Vermont Vehicle and Automotive Distributors Association did not have a thumbs up or thumbs down. The manufacturers were supportive. And I think most dealers, if you talk to them this morning, they would tell you they were cautiously optimistic. They want to sell the cars and trucks that Vermonters want to buy. There's a tremendous amount of incentives and enthusiasm behind electric vehicles, and they did not oppose it at all. They do now. So just a reminder, the California Air Resources Board has permission, state of California has permission from the federal government to impose more stringent standards on tailpipe emissions. And this includes removing the tailpipe completely in the form of the Advanced Clean Car 2 rule and the Advanced Clean Truck rule. Vermont, some states have adopted some or all or none. If they don't have none, they follow the EPA standard, the national standard, but these states have gone above and beyond the federal standard. And Vermont is one of those that have adopted both the Clean Car and Clean Truck rule, as is New York, as is Massachusetts, not New Hampshire. So here's where we're at. We're at 12% now. I think with or without incentives, just on inertia alone, I think we will absolutely get to 14%. I think we'll be at 15%, but I'm just prognosticating. I'm just guessing. I'm just looking at the numbers, I think we're going to get to 15% at the end of the year, which is good for those that support electric vehicle transportation. However, we are a far cry from 35%. So that's the ACC2 requirement, again, getting up to 100% in 2035. So what does this mean? So what you often hear from advocates of this policy, and I hear it all the time, and it's a little bit frustrating to tell you the truth, is about the flexibility of this rule. Let's talk about that. Right now, just using simple math and picking on Ford, here's your Mach-E Mustangs, all electric vehicles, and your Ford F-150s, all gasoline-powered vehicles. Just to keep the math simple, there's 14, right now we're at 12%. So 2 Mach-E's, 14 gas-powered Ford F-150s. You get to 35% by 2026, the manufacturers, not the dealers, not the consumers, but the manufacturers who must comply. Well, one way is they simply provide more Mach-E's. You want to sell the same 14 F-150s? Here's 9 Mach-E's. Another way they can comply is by lowering the denominator, sending us fewer F-150s. You only want to sell 2 Mach-E's? You only can sell 2 Mach-E's, Mark Hayes and Newport, Hayes Ford and Newport? Fine. We're just going to send you less of the trucks that your customers want to buy. We'll send you 2 Mach-E's and 4. You only want two electric, we'll send you 4 combustion. Gets trickier in 2028, in just 3 years, where we're about 50% compliance. So you have much more Mach-E's. Remember, a dealer takes possession of the car, they start paying interest on that car. They don't, unless they have cash, which no one has that much cash, you're paying interest on the car that's on your lot. You're negotiating with your manufacturer that the car is delivered. And if that car, the faster that car moves, the less interest you pay, the better off you are. If that car has a birth date, that's a problem. Meaning if it stays on your lot for a year.
Representative Will?
That tax is a floor plan.
Floor plan.
Okay.
So that's one way they get more of the, if the manufacturer has them and wants to comply, that's one way to comply. Or in 3 years, you only can sell 2 Mach-E's, Mark Hayes and Newport. You only get 2 F-150s.
Can those floor plans be renegotiated at any time?
Yes, and so that's a good conversation because we have a franchise law which protects us as dealers. One thing that was made clear to us is that the franchise law does not protect the manufacturers from not following Vermont law. So lawyers are going to sort this out at a very high level in probably other states before we figure it out. But this has people there. Now that's part of the negotiation. The other part of negotiation is because there's another way. There's more flexibility here. We can either increase the denominator, send you more electric vehicles, or we can decrease the denominator, send you fewer gas-powered vehicles, or we can pay this guy. Because Tesla owns the majority of credits that are available to manufacturers. Doesn't have to be his guy. Could be Rivian, could be Lucid. How do we know this? Because the Alliance for Automotive Innovation told us so. They wrote a letter, sent it to the governor, sent it to the Speaker of the House, sent it to the President Pro Tem, and we certainly read it, and it shook us to our core. That these are the 3 ways they see it as their flexibility definition is they're going to comply with the law 3 ways. Send us electric vehicles that our customers don't want. Sell us fewer vehicles that our customers do want. Pay those manufacturers that overproduce credits. Elon Musk. And you can read that letter at metahillmiracle.com. Miracle, because they said it's going to take a miracle.
How come they just can't, like I said, renegotiate the floor plans and, you know, the wholesaler, we're not gonna charge you. We're gonna send you these cars, you're gonna put them on the lot. Don't worry about it. You don't have to replace them all in 1 year. You can just let them sit there for 30 years and you met your ratio. I mean, am I being too simplest? How can you figure that?
If the manufacturer sends Mark Hayes of Hayes Ford and Newport, or Mark Alderman in Rutland,
Yeah.
once he gets the cars, he owns them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you renegotiated the floor plan, like, I mean, is there any wiggle room where they're, work on an agreement saying, all right, we're for these EVs and these mandates, we're not gonna.
Well, this is the careful dance that we're in, Representative Corcoran. The careful dance is in some markets, they'd say, well, we only want 20% EVs and 80% gas.
Yeah.
Some markets we want 2% EVs and 98% gas. And the manufacturer is telling us, too bad. You can have option 1, we've been given flexibility. We give you option 1, which is increase your denominator with cars you don't want. Option 2, decrease your denominator with cars you do want. Or option 3, we can write a check. What we don't know, because this is all new to us, which is what is that check and what's the impact on the car dealers? And thus, what's the impact on our consumers? Pass that along. We don't know this. What is the fee or fine that they pay in lieu of? I've seen a couple different numbers. I've seen manufacturers tell me $20,000 per car. I said, that's ridiculous. But that's what they're claiming.
Who's the enforcement agency? Who collects? Who pays? To whom?
So as I understand it, and there's probably a lawyer in the room that probably has a better understanding, but as I understand, it's the Agency of Natural Resources that enforces this rule here in Vermont.
And they have enforcement power through that, and who actually goes out and really have to file their reports of their inventory? How does that work? How do they know what's actually going on? Basically,
It's happening now. If you go on the Agency of Natural Resources website, Department of Environmental Conservation, you can see which manufacturers have overperformed, underperformed. So the numbers are available. The issue is we're dealing with two different timelines, and it's causing a lot of fear, to be quite honest with you. So the first fear is that we're dealing with model year 2026 as the first compliance year. As you may know, they're building model year 2026 now. The first ones will be in Detroit and Japan and Germany now. The first ones tend to get released a quarter before the actual year. So you might have experienced where you've been able to buy the year ahead in the last quarter of the past fiscal year or calendar year. So obviously there's lots of concern if you're a he admitted it this morning, so I'll just say it. Mark Alderman Chevrolet in Rutland, top performer, 500 electric vehicles, Chevy Bolts. He is really good at selling electric vehicles. And he was there this morning at our testimony. He said, I can't sell more than this. I can't get to that number. So the question is, well, can he negotiate a floor plan that allows him to sell what he thinks he can sell? Or will the manufacturer tell him no? Vermont law, Vermont regulations require us to put 35%. So you either take more of the cars that you can't sell, or fewer of the cars that you want to sell, or this other flexible feature, either pay a fee or fine or buy credits. And Mark's out of that. Mark Hayes is out of that. Every car dealer, all 93 new car dealers, they are not part of that negotiation with Agency of Natural Resources.
but the fee or the fine or the credits are not defined in dollar value somewhere yet.
So it's our understanding that the fee could be as high as $20,000 per car, from $5,000 to $20,000. But I honestly don't know, because it's not between the dealer and A&R. It is between the manufacturer and A&R. So in other words, we're in a box. We're getting squeezed. The manufacturer is saying, this is your law. We're going to have to do this, comply with it. We're either going to send you cars you don't want, not send you the cars you do want, or pay a fee, which I don't think anyone thinks that they're not going to see some sort of repercussion on that in terms of how these cars are allocated. No, there's no fee or fine that gets paid without it getting passed on. Or typically.
And why wouldn't, if you're concerned about your business, why wouldn't you just take it over to New Hampshire? And that's an expensive move. But I mean, personally, that's what I would do. If I had the money, if I was Mark Alderman, and I'm not saying it wouldn't put a hurting on him, I would, I would move out of state.
So
It's like, why wouldn't some of them do that?
can I respond to that?
Sure, I'm sorry.
Mark and his dad, Phil, have had a long history of serving the people of Rutland. They love their community. They have relationships with people in their community. They can't pick up sticks and go. Now you, as a car buyer, can,
Yeah.
but it's really, really challenging for any of these businesses. That's why for some of them, they view these rules as an existential crisis. Denise Alosa, who runs New England Kenworth, that business has sold trucks for over 100 years in Vermont. She thinks that there might be no, because it's true. If she doesn't have the trucks that the manufacturer is required to sell, if she doesn't have the trucks that her customers need to buy, she cannot be in business any longer. And this will end a historical family-owned company. And that's just one of them.
Representative Wells?
Yeah, that's so incredibly unfair in 2028 to go 51% and not get the vehicles that you can sell, and you're forced to get vehicles that you can't sell. That's just ridiculous. Can we get out of the alliance in Vermont? And how the heck did we ever get in bed with California for their standard, not have our own?
Well, so that's the getting out of the CARB rule. And I'll tell you, the Global Warming Solutions Act requires us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The Climate Action Plan and the climate counselors see that this is the best method for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the sector that emits the most. This is the plan. This is exactly what has been on the works for 4 years. Require manufacturers to deliver to Vermont electric vehicles that do not burn gasoline and emit greenhouse gas emissions.
I think everybody should do their part, but putting this in the same standard of California is just crazy. They got 80 times as many people as us. They pollute tremendously. We don't. We got to do our share, but I don't get it.
Well, and I guess I have to say, this is the law. This is the plan. This is the law. Whether it does or does not get changed is what we're all collectively in the bigger part of the building for. In this particular case, it is to report what the information is but the issue of the law, that is the law that gets decided, in some other ways and pieces that you're now part of. But this is what we're learning today, is this is what the law is. And we will have an additional testimony about the law from someone else's perspective, but this is what we're hearing today.
Representative Walker, I appreciate that. And if I could just sort of step back and go, okay, there is flexibility for consumers. For those that say this is a mandate on consumers to buy an electric vehicle, that is wrong. They are not required to buy an electric vehicle. That flexibility is what also creates an existential crisis for the businesses that sell vehicles. Because if you can just as easy go from Mark Hayes's place in Newport when you don't see that F-150 that you want to buy and go over to Littleton, or if you're in White River, to go over to Lebanon, or if you're in Brattleboro Subaru, and go over to Keene, and you can buy the car you want and bring it back, put a green plate on it and register it. You haven't solved climate change, haven't reduced emissions, you have harmed your local businesses that sell vehicles. And it's not because they're against EVs. One of the more shocking bits of testimony came yesterday. Andrea Cohen with Vermont Electric Co-op. And this curve is going the wrong way. If you support the adoption of electric vehicles, if you support the rule, this should scare you. 64%. And Vermont Electric Co-op, and I've known Andrea for 20 years, she put this together because she needed to know how many transformers to buy, what the load shape was going to be. This is smart planning by a smart utility executive. It wasn't asking them, do you want this? Don't rah, EVs, or no, EVs are bad. It was just planning. And what she found in Vermont Electric Co-op territory is that the curve is going the wrong way. Rather than more people saying, yeah, electric vehicles make sense, they are saying never. They are saying no. 64% of the people in Vermont Electric Co-op territory, according to the survey, according to testimony from Andrea Cohen, they're not buying. That's a problem. That's a problem for us meeting our climate goals, mandates. It's a problem for dealers that won't have the vehicles, may not have the vehicles that the customers want to buy. And the reasons are varied. I would have her in. She's very articulate on the reasons why that number is going in the wrong direction. But you should want that number to go down. 73% in 2019 saying no, all the way down to 53% in 22, now back up to 64%. I have lots of theories. But someone who's done a deep dive into this should probably have more representation of why.
Representative Beth?
Yeah, thanks for this chart. And before you even put it up, I was going to ask, do the dealers have reasons why more people wouldn't buy it? Is it like charging? You know, what are some of the reasons that you're hearing? Maybe you don't have data, but
So this morning, Mark Alderman, again, top seller, he said when people have their own garage with a level 2 charger and are paying $1.30 equivalent for power for their car, gasoline equivalent, and, you know, commute less than 50 miles to work, like, they'll never go back to gas. We got them. They're EV all the way. But if you don't own your own home, if you don't have a 20 by 10 foot lot up there, if you don't have access to the power that gives you anything more than a trickle charge, yeah, it's really difficult. And our fear as sellers of cars perspective is that when these short-term leases come off in 24 months, and, you know, if you're a renter, even if you're a renter, even the inconvenience of having to find a public charger or doing a trickle charge or whatever, $100 a month lease for an electric vehicle, that's gosh darn attractive. But when they come off that lease and no longer have that great deal and have to pay more $500 a month for a vehicle payment, will they go back to a new electric vehicle or will they go back to a used gas car? I think they're going to go back to used gas. So I think it works great. And there's no question it works great in certain situations, and we're going to continue to build electric vehicle sales, just not the pace at which the law requires. Trucks are a bigger problem. We sell far less trucks. Far less. This is from the Department of Motor Vehicles, 6,193 new trucks registered in Vermont 2024. Remember, trucks go from Class 2B, which is anything over 8,500 gross vehicle weight, like a Shelby Silverado 2,500 or a Ford F-250. Most of them, not all, but most of them are tools. They're not toys. They're not pleasure vehicles. They are for specific purposes. And it makes sense. You know, cars are delivered. You go to a new car, go to any car lot on Berlin Road, and you'll see a sticker. And that sticker will say, delivered to Freedom Nissan, 302 East Montpelier Road, whatever it says. It says it right on it. That is what we count when we determine whether the manufacturer is compliant with the Clean Car Standard. But trucks are assembled. As any of you that might know that have purchased a large vehicle and assembled it, you buy the chassis here, you buy the end here, you get it outfitted there. It might be in 4 different states before it actually gets to you and you start to put it to work. And so because of that, or maybe that plus other reasons, but it certainly makes sense why they would only count the trucks in the clean truck rule that are registered in Vermont. So for a manufacturer to get credit under the clean truck rule for Freightliner, who sells a truck to Charlie Boys in Milton, in order for Freightliner to get credit for the truck that Charlie Boys sells, they have to make sure that Charlie Boys' customer, the fuel company or the town of whatever, actually registers it in the state of Vermont. Different, right? Nothing stopping you from going to Lebanon in order to buy that car. Only Mark Alderman loses out. But in here, you actually have to register it in Vermont. Now, the scale is different, right? We're 10% in 2026 and we're 50% in 2030. But there are certain trucks of which there are no practical electrical counterparts. Think about Holland Milk. Think about going to Eden and pulling milk out of a farm and recognizing that a truck can be run 24/7. Just the driver has to change because of federal laws on commercial drivers. But you can't, because there's not the network of chargers for these large vehicles. For anyone that's volunteered their time at a bus depot, a bus authority, as I did with Representative Pouch there so long ago, they require a different set of infrastructure than a level 2 charger. Understood. And there's a cost basis to that. And of course, these trucks are going all over dirt roads, picking up logs and milk and fuel and delivering it. So this becomes impractical for a lot of reasons. Nevertheless, the cost is prohibitive. It's 2 or 3 times as much. Will it always be that way? No. We're probably on the verge of a technological breakthrough. Will give us cheaper, better technology, and that will all be wonderful. It's just not here yet. And I don't know when it will be here. I'm not that smart. However, there is a loophole as big as a Mack truck. You got a green plate today, get a white plate tomorrow. So in that scenario with the cars, only the local dealer misses out. Scenario with the truck, not only does the dealer lose business,
State.
but the state of Vermont loses our registration fees and loses any weight permitting fees. And for people in the fuel business that are on the Connecticut River, this is like not even it's easy. You have an office in New Hampshire, you park your trucks there, you register, you send your money to Concord. You don't send it to Montpelier.
See trailers. Actually, hold on, but like heavier duty trailers, I see them registered in Maine. Actually, have one, it saves me a lot of money. I know it has nothing to do with electric, but I mean, that same type of mentality would carry over to New Hampshire, I would think, the electric.
So we're asking for consideration. Consideration that there needs to be, I think, coordination between the CARB states on how this is enforced. We have done our research, determined what rights that dealers have, Vermont dealers have to protect themselves. And this is the law. Manufacturers are following the law. How they choose, because of all this flexibility, how they choose to follow it will have a strong impact on what we have on our lots available to sell, what consumers can buy. And this uncertainty around what cars we're going to have model year 2026 in trucks and how the manufacturers will comply. Remember, it says Ford at Mark Hayes' place in Newport. It says Chevrolet at Mark Alderman's place in Rutland. Mr. Chevy and Mr. Ford do not live there, but the two Marks do, and they're the ones getting caught in the squeeze. They're all in on EVs. They want to sell EVs, but probably not in the speed at which the law requires.
Representing what?
If the federal incentives go away, maybe they already have gone away, and Vermont continues EV incentives, would that be enough to help the dealers with this significant concern?
Couple things. Thank you for that question. You won't find a dealer that says incentives don't help. They absolutely help. They help make a sale, and they come from a variety of places. The federal incentives, of course, is a tax credit, which has been very helpful, especially when the IRS determined that leases were available. Smartly, the prior legislature structured the state leases to focus on low-income Vermonters. I think that's the right thing to do. So someone with a high income who wanted to buy a $90,000 Tesla wasn't going to get that $5,000. But someone who wanted to buy a affordable Nissan Leaf or Chevy Volt that had that certain income criteria, they got the money. So helping low-income Vermonters access electric vehicles, there's no question that state policies will help drive that. And I think that's a positive thing, particularly because low-income Vermonters who may not own their home or not have a garage or a place to park, their own dedicated parking spot where they can plug in every night, they'll find the most challenges to it. So assuming that the state incentives were similar, I think that absolutely helps those customers. But it doesn't get us. We have to increase. We've increased 2% every year. Every year we go up 2%. We got to go up 200% in the next year. We're no amount of it. Well, I should say no amount. If we gave the cars away for free, we could do it. But we're not there yet. And I don't think the manufacturers are going to do that.
No.
At least not. Yeah. So I would love if the legislature had a conversation about how these credits will shake out over the next 2 to 3 years. Because we don't like option 1 or option 2. Option 1 is making us take the cars and pay for the cars that our customers don't want. And we definitely don't want option 2, which is take fewer cars that our customers want to actually buy And number three is a black box that we really have no ability to influence. How many credits they buy from Mr. Musk versus how many fees or fines they pay for the government agency regulating them. That's all done by the manufacturer. We don't know how that's going to impact us, our bottom line. We would like to know. And we think all the CARB states who believe in this policy, who understand that this is how we are going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector, recognize this cliff that we're up and help work with the local dealers who, again, aren't opposed to EVs. I know I keep saying this, but I want to make sure that they want to sell cars. They want to sell trucks. So finding a way that we can come up with a policy that may be scaling back or maybe delaying fees or fines doesn't knock us off track, but we keep getting closer. Every month that passes, we get closer and closer to the edge. And there's this thought that something's going to catch us. Maybe at the last minute, we'll realize, oh, this is too punitive and we're going to pull the fines. Maybe President Trump will decide, no, California does not have the right to enforce clean air standards. And Vermont does not have the right to follow California. But you know what? Someone might be whispering in his ear saying, no, this is good for me financially. You keep that. You keep that.
Representative Pat?
How are we measuring up against other states that have this? Do you know, are you talking to them, or what, where are they? Like California, I think.
California, far and away, leader in the clubhouse, 20%. I do have the numbers from New York. I just don't have them on me, but I'm happy to gather them. Our national association has captured all of the numbers of CARB and non-CARB states. What are the electric vehicle uptake rates and new car sales, not used cars, but new cars.
Are we in the middle? Are we like not doing nearly as well, or are everybody in the same boat?
I can say we're doing better than the non-CARB states, but we're not doing as well as the highest performing CARB state, which is California.
Anybody else? Matt, thank you very much for coming in. You didn't take any trouble to take that whole hour and then some.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it, as always.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Presentation this morning, but I had to.
He's here for sure.
So I represent children, so we have phone calls.
Okay.
I just sent all the tax.
All right. So we're gonna, do you wanna start at all or not?
I don't need to.
Yes.
If you wanna sit there or not, you don't wanna do.
But I'm holding that.
Some other
Okay.
Makes the higher those construction costs are gonna be.
Absolutely.
But 80% of it, we agree to pay the rest of the 20, but you see it as a positive.
We're still live, I guess.
Yeah.
Time wise, it's gonna be okay. I can't see, that's all I'm saying, I don't know. But it's not 2:00 yet, so we can break and then start again.
Current owner did not want it.
Oh, interesting.
Let's adjourn shortly.